各位家长朋友们，大家晚上好，我是爱家网的工作人员海东。又到了礼拜四的晚上，今晚的主题讲座《美国大学升学备考指南》将由我来为大家主持。今天是爱家网主题讲座的第10期。纽约的家长朋友们在过去的2周里刚刚经历了一场政治风暴，也就是纽约市市长白思豪计划取消纽约市的8所特殊高中通过 SAT 考试的录取方式，并以新的录取方式所取代。这对纽约市的亚裔孩子们未来进入这些特殊高中将产生巨大的影响。我们上周请来了程立红老师，为大家介绍了 SAT 的来龙去脉。没有听到上周讲座的朋友，可以在爱家网网站还有爱家网公共号文章中查看一下我们发布的上周讲座的录音。SAT 是在纽约的初中考取特殊高中的一个考试。那么从美国的高中毕业升入大学的时候，又要考一些什么考试呢？而作为亚裔，申请大学的时候又有什么需要注意的地方呢？我们今天特意请来了泰老师，为爱家网的听众朋友们介绍美国大学升学备考的相关知识。泰老师是美籍韩裔，高中毕业于纽约市8所特殊高中之一的布朗士科技高中，大学从宾夕法尼亚大学经济学毕业。泰老师拥有15年的教学咨询经验，现在 Sage 学院担任首席升学咨询导师。就在今年刚刚公布的大学录取中，不少高中生在泰老师的帮助下取得了满意的录取通知书，其中包括2名被哈佛大学录取，1名被普林斯顿、耶鲁和宾夕法尼亚大学录取，并获得这3所学校的全额奖学金；1名被康奈尔大学和约翰霍普金斯大学录取，还有多名被宾夕法尼亚大学录取，还有多名被其他美国顶尖大学录取的好成绩。介绍一下今晚的讲座规则，在讲座进行的时候，请大家保持安静，不要发送任何语音、文字或者图片信息干扰他人听讲。在讲座进行到最后20分钟时，我们将开放大家通过文字进行现场提问，所以请大家把问题留在那个时候再提出。主题讲座的内容仅代表嘉宾本人的观点，不代表主办方爱家网的立场。为了保证大多数人的正常听讲，以上讲座规则一旦有人违反，将会被立即移出群。如有不便之处，还请大家谅解。那么我们就把下面的时间交给泰老师做今天的主题讲座《美国大学升学备考指南》。今天的讲座将用英文进行。
Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. My name is Tae Kang. I am the head college consultant for Sage Prep. Today I will be giving you a brief overview of the college application process with a focus on the standardized test and what the student needs to do to prepare accordingly. More specifically, I will go over the details of all the major exams that the student will need to take to get into college. They are the SAT-1 or the ACT and the SAT subject tests, otherwise known as the SAT-2, and of course the advanced placement exams. First, the SAT-1. The SAT-1 exam has 4 sections. First section is reading, where you read passages and answer questions based on the passages. Second section is the writing or the grammar section, where you read a passage and correct the grammatical errors of the passage. Third is a math section that is administered without a calculator. And then the fourth section is a longer math section. Here you can use a calculator. There's also an optional essay section. The entire test, including the essay, will take about 4 hours. Without the essay, it is about 3 hours. The reading section is worth 400 points. The writing is also 400. And the math sections are combined to be 800 points. The perfect score on the SAT, therefore, is 1600. There are 7 chances to take the test every year. It is given on August, October, November, December, March, May, and June. The deadline to register for the tests are usually a month before the test date. It is recommended, however, to register as early as possible to make sure that the student's spot is reserved. Once the test is taken, the scores are reported roughly 2 weeks from the test. The students will receive an email notification, or they may log on to College Board website to check their scores. the SAT is not a free exam. So to be aware, it's important to be aware of the payment process that is involved, and it's roughly $50 to take. There are additional costs, however, if you're an international student. Okay, so this test, SAT, is one of the most important exams to take in a student's career, as most top colleges require the SAT. A student may take the SAT more than once to get his or her desired score. The colleges do allow the students to choose which scores to send. This is called score choice. If the college allows the students to do so, the student can send the score he or she wants to show to the colleges and not reveal other scores. To give you an example, if the student took the March SAT-1 and received a score of 1200, and then he takes the May one again and gets a score of 1500, he doesn't have to send the 1200 from March to colleges since it doesn't look that great on the application. Some colleges, however, do not allow score choice. For instance, Cornell and University of Pennsylvania do not allow score choice. So for these colleges, the student needs to send all the scores. If this is the case, the student must send every test score he has taken. The college usually refers to this as a super scoring of the tests. Super scoring means that if you send all the scores to the colleges, they combine the results from the previous exams to get the highest possible score for the student. So I'll give you another example. If the student took the March one, and let's say he receives 800 on the math and 500 on the reading, and then he takes the May one and receives 700 on the math and 700 on the reading, the college will super score the results. So he will take, the colleges will take the 800 from the math of March and 700 on the reading of the May for a complete score of 1500. As for the optional essay, it is not really optional, unfortunately. It is recommended that students register to take the SAT with the essay. This is because while most colleges do not take the essay very seriously, some colleges do require it. Since the student won't know what colleges he or she will be applying to until after the SAT, it is a good idea to have the essay score on the record, just in case. It is often a good idea to take the SAT as soon as possible. Any test taken while the student is in high school can be sent to colleges. Anything taken before high school is not eligible to be sent. Most students who are Ivy League or top college bound receive a score above 1520 by the end of their 10th grade. A typical schedule that works well is for the student to start preparing for the SAT during the summer of 9th grade and work throughout the 10th grade school year and take the SAT-1 in May of their 10th grade year. If the score isn't good enough then, it is a good idea to study over the summer of 10th grade and take the test again in August or October. I'll give an example of this later on. A score that is balanced is stronger to submit to colleges than one that isn't. To give you an example, a student who receives a score of 1400 by getting 800 on the reading and 600 on the math typically won't be favored over a student who receives a score of 1400 by getting 700 on the math and 700 on the reading. This is especially true for many Asian applicants who tend to get a higher score on the math. Although the students can take the SAT as many times as he wants, it is not recommended that the student take the SAT more than 3 times. This is because the SAT is an extremely high-stress test that requires a great deal of time and energy. It is also difficult to improve the score over a short period of time. Therefore, if the student keeps taking the test, it is not productive as it takes away from his ability to do well in school and other extracurricular activities, which are just as important. No college will reject an applicant purely based on a test score, so do not pressure the student to take it many times. As the SAT requires time and energy, it is important to take the student familiar with the test. It's important to make the student familiar with the test. The section on the test aren't covered in a typical school curriculum. A student who receives an A, for instance, in English, may not even get 600 on the verbal section of the SAT. By the same token, a student who gets A's in his math class may not even break 700 on the math section. This is because the SAT tests the students on a particular set of information, and as such require a set of strategies that the student may not know yet. Also, it is very difficult to improve on reading if the student does not practice the reading portion under a regimented schedule. So all in all, without planning, SAT is very difficult for students who aren't naturally talented. Lastly, while it depends on the school, a score that is above 1450 is considered average for the top colleges. A score above 1500 is considered safe. The elite colleges or the Ivy League schools, it is recommended that the student achieve a score of 1550 or above. There is no penalty for guessing, so no question should be unanswered on the test. This is different for the SAT subject tests, which I'll explain later on. On the SAT, roughly one wrong on any of the sections is 10 points off. To give you an idea, a student who gets one wrong on the reading, one wrong on the writing, and two wrong on the math will receive a score around 1540 to 1560, depending on the curve. It is very hard to do considering that there is a total of 154 questions on the test. A good way to understand how a student will do on the actual SAT is to take the practice SAT or the PSAT that is given for free by the school. It is given twice, once in October of the student's 10th grade year and again in October of the 11th grade. It should be noted that the PSAT is at a 1520 and it's not at a 1600, and it is a shorter test with no essay portion. The 10th grade test should be taken seriously though, as it will serve as a good starting point for extra SAT prep. Furthermore, this score can be used by a student to apply to a variety of summer school camps or college programs. And the 11th grade PSAT is even more important because it will be used for a merit-based scholarship. This is a nationally recognized award that the student can actually write on their applications later on. Okay, so instead of the SAT, the ACT is also accepted by the schools. It's not as popular in New York as the SAT. However, the ACT is very similar to the SAT. That ACT is also something that is given 7 times throughout the school year. The dates are somewhat different from the SAT, as it's given in September, October, December, February, April, June, and July. Similar to the SAT, it is roughly 3 hours and has an optional essay section. However, it is different in that it has a science section. The science section requires general science knowledge and the ability to interpret data and graphs. It is extremely similar to answering lab questions a student encounters in a high school lab science class. If a student struggles to interpret data quickly, this section can be very challenging. The math portion of the ACT is a little more comprehensive as it has more advanced concepts than the SAT. The reading and the writing portions are very similar to the SAT. Typically, the ACT is taken by students who have stronger reading skills. This is so because there are more questions in the ACT than the SAT. SAT, as I've mentioned before, has 154 questions. The ACT has 215 questions. So overall, the ACT has roughly 60 more questions than the SAT, but the same amount of time as SAT. This is why I really don't recommend students with poor reading skills to take the ACT, as he or she simply won't have enough time to finish. Each section in the ACT is out of 36 points. The 4 sections are averaged for the composite score. The perfect composite score, therefore, is 36. A great score is 34 and above. Again, just like the SAT, a good balance is required. If the student receives, let's say, 34 on the reading, 34 on the math, 30 on the science, and 30 on the writing, this student will have a composite score of 32. To give you an idea of what that is one wrong per section will get a student a 35. Like the SAT-1, there is no penalty or extra points taken off for guessing on any question. Most of the students who take the ACT do so because it allows them to take the test while preparing for the SAT. They use it as an insurance or as a chance to take a college accepted test while they wait to take the SAT. To give you an idea, a student who needs to apply to college by November may take the August SAT-1 and a September ACT and then October SAT-1. This is a good strategy if you do not have all the necessary test scores but must apply to college. In general, however, it is not recommended to prepare for both the ACT and the SAT, as it places too much stress on the student, and the student will typically not do well on both or either of the exams. Also, another reason that a student will choose to take the ACT is if he does not have SAT subject tests. I'll get into this portion later, but in general, most competitive colleges want to see 2 or more SAT-2 subject tests. If the student does not have any SAT subject tests, the colleges prefer to see the ACT instead of the SAT, as the ACT has the extra science section. Still, because the college process has become so competitive, most kids who take the ACT also take a few SAT subject tests to supplement their application to boost it, so to speak. Okay, so that brings me to the SAT subject tests. The subject tests are required by competitive colleges for admittance. For example, MIT requires the SAT-2 chemistry test as well as the SAT-2 math 2C examination. There are 8 major subject tests and multiple foreign language options. The test dates for the subject exams are the same as the SAT-1. However, it is important to note that certain language exams are given only on certain months, so the student must plan very carefully if he's going to take the SAT-2 subject test for a particular language. For instance, the Chinese SAT-2 test is only given in November. Okay, and a student is allowed to take up to 3 subject tests per test date. This means then the student can take, let's say, a bio test, a math test, and a world history test on one registered test date. The student cannot take the SAT-1 and a subject test on the same day. This also means that the student must carefully plan to make sure that he can get all the tests done by the time he applies to colleges. This planning is a little tricky, as I said, because you need to take SAT-1, and most students end up taking it 2 to 3 times. You also need to take 3 SAT-2s, or at least 2 SAT-2s, and they cannot be on the same day. Each subject test has different number of questions and level of difficulty, but they are 1 hour each. For instance, the biology test is 1 hour, and you need to answer 80 questions. Chemistry is roughly 100 questions, and it's still 1 hour. The math test is 50 questions, and it's 1 hour. Unlike the SAT-1, there is a penalty for getting a question wrong versus leaving it unanswered. To give you an idea, let's say a student takes a 10-question test worth 100 points. According to the SAT-2 grading system, if a student gets 9 right and skips 1 question or leaves it unanswered, he will get a score of 90. If he gets 1 question wrong and gets the rest 9 correct, he will get a score of 87.5. Basically, each question wrong is multiplied by 0.25. So in short, it's better to leave a question blank than to guess it wrong. The perfect score on the SAT subject test is 800. An acceptable score for the SAT-2 subject test is different for each subject. For instance, for the SAT-2 math test, the 2C test, an unacceptable cutoff is actually a perfect 800 because roughly 20% of the students who take the test get that score. It is generally a good score if the student receives anything above 740 on the other subject tests, however. It's important to note that what subject tests to take. For instance, if I am applying to Harvard as a philosophy, so if I'm applying to Harvard as a philosophy major, it is good to take, for instance, SAT-2 World History, SAT-2 US History, and SAT-2 French. If I am applying as a computer science major to Carnegie Mellon, it's good to take, let's say, SAT-2 Math 2C, SAT-2 Physics, and SAT-2 Chemistry. If, for instance, I'm applying to Johns Hopkins as a biology major, I should definitely take SAT-2 Biology, SAT-2 Chemistry, and SAT-2 Math. There is no rule for what subject tests a student should take unless the specific program or college require certain subject tests, and they do specify it on their website or their brochure, so it is important to check that before you apply. It is a good idea to show interest through the subject tests, however, so it's to use a little bit of logic when applying for these tests and making sure that it matches with your college major or what colleges you're going to be applying to is important. In general, the SAT-2 subject tests match the high school curriculum. Most 9th graders, for instance, take biology, and most 10th graders take world history, for example. So it is a good idea to take the SAT-2 after the completion of the school curriculum. A good plan, for instance, would be to take SAT-2 biology upon completion of the 9th grade curriculum or in June of 9th grade. Similarly, a 10th grader can take SAT-2 world history since he would have taken the course in school. However, it is not good to rely purely on the school curriculum to prepare for the subject tests. School curricula provide like a good starting point, but they do not specifically prepare the students for the subject tests. It is incredibly important to realize that the SAT-2 subject tests are very, very difficult. They're many times harder than the regular school curriculum. Even if a student receives a high score in class, it does not guarantee that he will do well on the SAT-2. Just because a student takes AP Biology does not mean he'll do well on the SAT-2 bio test. Therefore, it is important to study specifically for the SAT-2 exam as early as possible to guarantee a high score. Usually, that starts in December or January of the school year. Just like the SAT-1, a student can take the SAT-2 test as many times as he wants. Most schools allow the students to choose what tests to send. Just like I mentioned for the SAT-1, this is called score choice. So some schools will allow the student to send one or two of their subject tests, even though he has taken 3 or 4. However, just like the SAT-1, some schools require that all test scores be sent, so it's not a good idea to take the SAT-2 subject tests if the student isn't ready. However, if the student goes to take the SAT-2 test and he doesn't feel so good about it, then he may cancel the test. He has the option to cancel the test for up to as long as he does so within 3 business days of taking the test. Since most tests are given on Saturday, he has until Wednesday of next week, the week after, to cancel the test. However, if he cancels the test, he will not know what score he received on the test, as they simply will discard it and not grade it. Okay, so to give you a better idea of scheduling, I'll give you an example, a sample case for, let's say, a student applying to engineering school. For this student, in 9th grade, he starts preparing for the SAT-1 exam. In January of 9th grade, he starts preparing to take the SAT-2 science exam. For him, let's say bio. June of 9th grade, he takes the science 2 exam. And then over the summer, he continues to prepare for the SAT-1. He takes the PSAT October in his 10th grade. Depending on that score, he plans to take the SAT-1 either in March or May of 10th grade. At the same time, he prepares for another SAT-2 test, either world history or another science, depending on his major. He takes the SAT-1 in May of 10th grade, and then another science exam in June of 10th grade. Over the summer of 10th grade, then he does an overview of all the test results that he has received thus far, and prepares over the summer to either retake an exam or to take another SAT-2 subject test. If he is satisfied with the exam scores he has received on the SAT-1, SAT-2 from the previous year, he prepares for the SAT-2 2C exam over the summer and takes it in August or October, depending on how he feels. If he is not satisfied with the scores from 9th grade, he retakes one or more of the exams he wants to do in August and takes the Math 2C exam in October. By the end of his junior year, according to this plan, he is done with all the SAT requirements, and he can worry purely on school curricula, which is incredibly important. Being done with the SAT requirements by the junior year is incredibly beneficial to the students, as it allows him to focus on school subjects, which become increasingly challenging. Most students who aim for a top college take 4 to 6 advanced placement courses junior year. This is an incredible amount of pressure on the student, as it requires them to maintain a high level of GPA while doing a harder curriculum. If a student is not done with some of the major test requirements junior year, then he has to worry about the advanced placement subject tests or the advanced placement tests, as well as the SAT tests. Well, like I was trying to say, that would place an incredible amount of strain on his schedule, and it is highly not recommended to do. Okay. Part of the reason why the junior year is often the toughest is because this is when the advanced placement courses take place, which brings me to the APs. The advanced placement classes, commonly known as the APs, are also incredibly important. They are the tests that the student takes in May of their curriculum year. So I may take an AP World History test in May of my 10th grade if I took the course in 10th grade. These tests are by subject, just like the SAT-2 subject tests. However, they're specifically designed for the school curricula. So although some schools will give the students the option of taking or not taking the AP test in May, it is strongly recommended that the students take the AP exams, as the colleges will expect the students to take the exam if they have taken the course in school. So for instance, if I took an AP biology course in junior year and it shows on my transcript, the colleges will expect to see an AP biology test in May of that school year. A perfect mark on the AP is a 5, and in general, a 5 on the AP test is accepted as a college level credit. For example, if a student takes AP US history test and receives a 5, he receives credit for 1 history class in college. Every college has a different policy when it comes to APs, so it is best to check. Each AP test also has a different grading system and scale. Some AP exams are incredibly difficult, like the AP Physics C tests, and some are slightly easier, like the AP US History exam. In general, a score of 4 is considered acceptable by most colleges. The student must be extremely careful to prepare for these AP tests, as a lower score than a 4, such as a 3 or a 2, means that he doesn't have a good understanding of the subject and actually can hurt the student when he applies to college. One of the best advice that I can give to students taking APs is more is not often the best. A lot of students tend to take 5 or 6 APs thinking that it'll impress the colleges, but if the student is not ready to get 4 or above on the AP exam in May for all the courses that he has taken, the colleges will take note and penalize the student. So it's better to take a manageable amount and get a high score on those APs in May. More is never the best. Okay, so right, so I think I hope you guys are following along, but it's a lot of information, I know. So the overview of the major tests that are accepted by colleges is done now. Those are the 3 major tests that I wanted to go over today. It is very important to know that these tests are just a small portion of the application. There are many more important components, such as extracurricular activities, application essays, interviews, recommendations, school averages, to name a few, okay? So even if you don't have the highest SAT score, there are ways to make up for that. However, since applying to colleges is becoming tougher every year, every little component counts more and more. So it is incredibly important to successfully plan for the SAT-1 as well. Okay, so I hope this webinar has been informative. This was one of my first ones, and it's kind of a unique experience. I enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the tests I've overviewed today or any other questions regarding the college application process, I'll be answering a few questions after the completion of this info session. Also, I will be present at the open house this Saturday coming up at Sage, so definitely stop by and say hi, and my fellow consultants and I will gladly answer some questions. I know this was just a lot of information to handle, especially on a web format. Just come by and say hi. Well, thank you so much.
非常感谢泰老师为大家进行的宝贵分享。下面的时间，大家可以通过文字进行提问。提问时请尽量使用英文。提问时后请使用下面的指令。
Yeah, that is a really good question. If the student students score high enough on the AP test, can he or she request not to send the AP score? Well, the AP score is optional to send. However, it's not really optional because the colleges will know that the student took the AP. If you do not send the AP score, it's equivalent to admitting that you didn't do so well on it. So they do expect to see that. So although it is optional, it's not really optional. You must send it. Okay, to answer Joanne's question first, I think the earliest time to start for the SAT-1 prep would be the beginning of 9th grade. Reading portion takes a long time to improve on, and the writing as well. The math portion, the students actually do pretty well once they reach Algebra 2 or the pre-calculus level. But for the reading, 9th grade reading and 10th grade reading practices are necessary in order for them to achieve a score that is above 700. I don't typically teach SAT-2 physics. Personally, I teach SAT-1, and I specialize in SSG-SAT and college consulting and SAT-2 bio and math. However, I do know that the SAT-2 physics portion for just the regular SAT-2 subject test contains more of the curriculum, more in-depth curriculum than the Regents curriculum that the typical student encounters in 11th grade. I know that the AP Physics is divided into 1 and 2, and I've heard that the physics portion 2 and the C portion are incredibly difficult. In fact, I think only 2 kids from the entire nation get a perfect score on those. If you want more information on what is on the test, it is available on collegeboard.com. If you can just double check on the physics subject test portion and the AP portions, they do have a more comprehensive overview of all the topics. I'm not sure if I quite understand the question from YK. I'm assuming, is it better to take the SAT test from 11th grade? Is that what the question is? The name of my school is Sage Test Prep. We're located in 15 Jericho Turnpike. I think there is a detailed information going out after the talk. The open house is actually this Saturday from 4 to 7. You can stop by and I'll be here. So yeah, ask me questions then too. Thank you. I think, so I'm assuming that the question is it too late to take the SAT test in 11th grade? It's definitely not too late to take the test in 11th grade. The only reason why I wanted my students to take the test in 10th grade is because I know they have a lot to worry about in 11th grade. They have to worry about the AP exams in May. They may have a subject test that they still have to take. They may be the president of a number of clubs. They may have internships. They have research papers to write. They have volunteership. So because they have too many things to worry about, it's usually not a good idea to wait until 11th grade to take it. However, if that's the only option that the student has, then he may choose to take the ACT and the SAT so that he can maximize getting the highest score possible within the short amount of time. Yes, to answer the first question about the subject test, it is important to take the subject test. The last chance that a student has as a rising senior to take the subject test is the coming August test, and then he has three more chances to take it in October, November, and December. If he's applying early decision or early action to a school, then the absolute last chance that he should take it is in October. If it's for regular decision in January, he may take up to the December test. The second question about biology, that's actually a very interesting question because that is one of the strategies that I do recommend. Because so many Asian students or so many students who goes into medicine, like who applies for medical colleges and whatnot, they have the typical biology and chemistry. I do recommend a lot of students take another SAT-2 in addition to the sciences to show them that they are balanced. It is often a great idea to take a US history or an SAT-2 literature test in addition to the required bio and chemistry. To answer both questions, I think it's because they're very similar. If you want to apply to medical school, typically it is required to take a chemistry SAT-2. Most medical programs specifically mention that the student must take chemistry SAT-2, and then they don't have any other requirements. However, because most students who apply for biology or any typical engineering major, they do take math 2C exam. Because everybody else takes it, if you don't take it, then it looks kind of bad on the application. So typically a person who applies for a science major would take math SAT 2C exam and the chemistry SAT 2 and either bio or physics. If you can only take two, then I recommend taking SAT 2 chemistry and SAT 2 math. To add on to that a little bit, there is no list of subject tests that a college requires for a certain major. But if you're applying for a specific program, they do have a list. You do have to look for them. To answer the first question, the couple of universities are not required to take SAT. There are a lot of universities that don't require the SAT anymore. The highest ranked one is University of Chicago. They announced this week that they're getting rid of the SAT. However, they're making that optional, which means there's going to be a bunch of students who are going to apply to University of Chicago and send the SAT-1 score. So even though it is optional, although they say that it is optional, I think it's probably a best idea to send it anyway. And most of the reputable colleges don't still require the SAT. So unless you're planning to apply to a handful that don't require it, it is probably a good idea to still have it on file. The question about the language, it comes up a lot. If you are a native speaker, it's recommended not to take the SAT-2 because it's not as impressive. So if you speak Chinese fluently, then there's no point in taking the SAT-2 Chinese level test. However, some colleges do have a language requirement for graduation. Most colleges have a foreign language requirement. You can forego this language requirement for certain schools if you receive a score of 750 and above on the SAT-2 subject test. So after you get into college, senior year, I'd recommend some students to take the AP or the SAT-2 exam for the SAT-2 for the foreign language, so that they don't have to take a language in college. For a rising junior, I would recommend that the person take the test in August. The test is administered in the last week of August, so it gives him a good 2-month window to study. And after that, he should take it again in October and November. The most important thing is to try to get the test out of the way before next year, because he'll be very busy next year. It's probably a good idea to take the ACT if he doesn't show improvement from the August test. So let's say he gets like 1400 in August, and then he gets another 1400 or even lower in October, then it might be a good idea to take a stab at the ACT just to see how he does.
好的，谢谢大家的积极提问。不过今天的讲座时间已经到了，感谢泰老师在繁忙的工作之余仍然抽出时间为家长朋友们今天的分享。泰老师所在的 Sage 学院在小径和长岛的Jericho有2处分校，也就在后天，也就是本周六6月16号的4点到7点之间， Sage 学院将在他们的Jericho分校举办一场 Open House， 届时欢迎各位家长参观和进行免费的咨询。有兴趣的朋友可以扫码进入 Sage 学院咨询群了解详情。泰老师本人也会在 Open House 当天在Jericho分校为大家进行咨询。以下是 Sage 学院的具体的地址和联系电话。好，刚才发送的是 Sage 学院的咨询群二维码，对泰老师还有 Sage 学院提供的 SAT 补习课有兴趣的朋友们可以扫码进群进行咨询。欢迎大家关注爱家网公众号，以便获得下期微信讲座的信息。今天的节目就结束了，再次感谢大家的参与，祝大家晚安，我们下周节目再见。